boys and girls. I'm here to read Wayside School is Falling Down, and we're in chapter 28 called Valouche. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. I have some wonderful news, she said. The children stopped what they were doing and looked up. They waited for Mrs. Jules to tell them the wonderful news. You are a very lucky class indeed, said Mrs. Jules. Mrs. Valouche, the world-famous dancer, will be coming here to Wayside School. She will teach you how to dance. Everyone was still waiting for the wonderful news. Isn't that exciting? Asked Mrs. Jules. You will see her every Wednesday instead of going to PE. Will girls have to dance with boys? Asked Jenny. I suppose, said Mrs. Jules. Gross, exclaimed Leslie. Yuck, said Dana. Will boys have to dance with girls? Asked Ron. Obviously, said Mrs. Jules. No way, said Eric Fry. I'd rather dance with a dead rat, said Terrence. Everyone started talking at once about cooties and warts and other horrible diseases you get from touching girls or boys. Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell again and told them to settle down. Mrs. Jules, I don't need to take dancing lessons, said Eric Bacon. I already know how to dance. Yes, Eric, I've seen you dance, Mrs. Jules said sarcastically. Eric Bacon was a great break dancer, but breakdancing was no longer allowed at Wayside School. That was because every time Eric danced, he broke something. Mrs. Valouche will teach you the grace with dance and beauty of classical ballroom dancing, said Mrs. Jules. Everyone groaned. On Wednesday, they all headed down to their first dancing lesson, except Myron. Myron went to PE. How come Myron never has to do anything? Asked Jason. I don't know, said Kelvin. I've been wondering about that too. Myron's father must be friends with the president, said Betty. I think Myron gave Mr. Kidswatter $1,000, said Todd. No, I bet he's blackmailing Mrs. Jules, said Jenny. How could he do that? Asked Benjamin. Maybe Mrs. Jules, said Jenny, and then she danced at the top of her desk with a lampshade on her head. And Myron took her picture. And so now Mrs. Jules has to let Myron do anything he wants or else he'll show the picture to Mr. Kidswatter. That makes sense, said Mac. Except if she had a lampshade on her head, how would Mr. Kidswatter know it was Mrs. Jules? Asked Todd. No one knew the answer to that. They entered the room on the second floor. Welcome, said Miss Valouche, a strange-looking woman with bright red hair. It looked like her head was on fire. My name is Miss Valouche. It's so wonderful to be here at Wayside School. She wore pink tights and a sparkling pink top. I hope we will be friends, she asked. Nobody said a word. All around were red and green balls. There was also one yellow ball. This was the room where Lewis kept the balls for lunch and recess. It was also the room that was always used for school dances. It was the ballroom. So, exclaimed Mrs. Valouche, who will be first? Everyone tried to hide behind someone else. Mrs. Valouche put her hands on Ron's face. What is your name? She asked. Ron? He squeaked. Ronaldo, bellowed Miss Valouche, king of the gypsies. I don't know how to dance, said Ron. Dance? Asked Miss Valouche. She looked very surprised. We are not going to dance, she said. We're not? Asked Ron. No, Ronaldo, whispered Miss Valouche. We are going to tango. She put her left arm around Ron's waist. Then she grabbed his left hand with her right and stuck it way out in front of him. Suddenly, the music started. Mrs. Valouche dragged poor Ron across the room as she stomped her feet in time to the music. Dump, da 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 dump, dump, dump. Hey! When she yelled hey, she threw Ron up in the air and clapped her hands. Ron turned a somersault in midair. Then Miss Valouche caught him. They tangled back to where they started. Ron's eyes were spinning in opposite directions. Hey, that looked like fun, said Mauricia. Do me. Very well, said Miss Valouche. She grabbed Mauricia and tangled with her across the room. Dump, da dump, 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 da dump, da dump, 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 dump. Hey! She threw Mauricia up in the air and clapped her hands. Mauricia turned a double somersault before Miss Valouche caught her. They tangled back to the front. My turn, said Terrence. As Miss Valouche tangled with Terrence, the other kids stamped their feet along with Miss Valouche. They all yelled hey at the same time and clapped their hands. One by one, Mrs. Valouche tangled with every kid in class. The other kids danced with each other. Boys danced with girls, and girls danced with boys. They didn't care. Paul danced with Leslie. Dana danced with John. Terrence danced with Rondi. Ellison danced with Jason. DJ danced with Kathy. Todd danced with Joy. Hey, they all shouted. Of course they were strong enough to throw each other up in the air. Instead, they tried to trip each other and throw each other next to the ground. Hey! Even Kathy was having fun. Hey, she shouted as she kicked DJ. They also threw balls at each other. Hey! Mrs. Valouche began to get tired. Sometimes she didn't catch the children after she tossed them in the air. Dee Dee crashed to the floor. Wow, she said, this is more fun than hurt the man with the ball. Hey! At last the music stopped. Dump-da-dump-dump-dump. Dump-da-dump-dump-dump. And everyone shouted hey one last time. Mrs. Walush clapped her hands. Wonderful, she explained. Fantastic. They all staggered out of the ballroom, cut up, bruised, and bleeding. Next week, we waltz, Miss Walush called after them. So, how did everyone like dancing? Asked Mrs. Jules when they returned. Dance? Asked Ronaldo, king of the gypsies. We didn't dance. You didn't? Asked Mrs. Jules. No, said Ronaldo. We tangled. Everyone cheered. It was wonderful, exclaimed Kathy. Fantastic, said Terence. Myron was sorry he had missed it. I can't wait till next Wednesday, said Todd. The end.